What is going on, guys? Welcome back to part 2 or day 2 of the nitrous install video. Gonna try to do a lot today, so stick around and see what we get. Alright guys, so we are on day 2, and of course yesterday or day 1 we went ahead and installed the major components hardware wise, and that of course is our nitrous outlet plate system, our solenoids, and right here we've got the bottle all set up. Now today what we're gonna do is we're gonna run the nitrous line and get that routed from the back to the front, make sure that is secured, and then get started on installing the fuel system hardware. And of course for that we're gonna need to remove this foam insert here, because this is where the fuel cell will sit, and we'll go ahead and show you guys that in a moment. Alright guys, so I decided to remove the brackets. I went ahead and removed this piece here because we're obviously going to be working with on the back side of all this, but I needed to remove the brackets so that I can remove this. Now that led me to a new idea of not just leaving these holes but cutting out a slit on both ends, so that when I do remove the bottle I'm still able to just slide this up over the brackets and remove this piece here. And so I also went ahead and removed the foam insert that was here. This is where the fuel cell will sit. Alright guys, so nitrous outlet provides you with this pretty long nitrous line, which I'm going to start routing from the front to the back. Of course we want all the excess hose to be in the back side, so that's why I'm routing it from the front to the back. Alright guys, we've got the nitrous line already in its place, and if we go back here we can see that we still have quite a bit of extra just in case we have to do any light adjustments. And I did cut the hole through there. I gotta clean that up a little bit. But if we go down, I'm gonna show you guys just how I routed all of this. Okay, so as you guys can see, we got the nitrous line here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip tie right here and have this sitting there. Then as you guys if we keep going back, you see that I routed it up over the subframe and around the top frame here, and got it going around the tank. And back here I went ahead and just kind of hit it right under the heat shield of the tank. And as we get farther down, you guys can see I loosened this floorboard up and kind of followed the same fuel lines and ran it all the way through until we got to this point. And here you'll see that it's kind of a bit munched up, and that's because I ran the nitrous line up around the heat shield and then over this X-pipe setting, and it's now going through the top of this transmission brace. So we've got it going over the transmission brace and then back around the heat shield here, and you guys can see I kind of tucked it in there. I wrapped it up and tucked it all in neatly. And then here it actually goes up and behind all the main wiring, so that is actually really nice. So it's completely away from the headers and goes up behind this harness and up to the top of the engine where it connects to the nitrous solenoid. So you guys can see here it's connected to the nitrous solenoid and run behind the engine through that harness, away from all the heat. Very important, you want that stuff to be away from all the heat. So now we've got the fuel tank here, we've got the vent tube, which I'm going to drill back here up against the top side, and that'll just kind of go out that way and end up back here away from the exhaust. And then we've got our return line and our feed line, the output line. These I'm going to route back and do another 2 holes here, one for each line, to go back through and run the fuel system lines up to the front. Okay, so I've got the brackets back on. Of course, remember I did the slit so that I can slide the carpet over. I've also gone ahead and mounted the fuel tank, so it is in its place. Now we got to start figuring out what fittings we're going to use. Okay guys, so fuel system, again, not many instructions specifically for the Camaro, but they do come with 5 of these 90-degree fittings. We've got 2, looks like AN fittings. These are going to be probably for the regulator. You have a straight fitting, which you basically is going to be the same as 90, and then you've got this other AN style fitting, which looks like it's going to be for the regulator. So these 3 are for the regulator. The regulator uses this type of fittings. We're going to figure all this out, guys. We again have this regulator, which we have to mount. This is both a low pressure and a high pressure. It has this spring that you can use if you're going to be running a high pressure system. We're going to be doing a high pressure system, which means we have to disarm this pump, and I'll show you guys exactly how that is done. Got 4 little set screws or cover screws, which use a 9/64 Allen wrench. They say that you need to make sure that you back out the set screw here, so that's what we did. And now we just remove these 4, the cap comes off, and you can swap out the spring for the high pressure swing. Alright guys, so here you can see this is the low pressure spring and this is the high pressure spring. It's a lot stiffer, a lot smaller, but it is going to allow us to fine tune this for a higher pressure. So we're just going to put that back in. It comes with this little spacer cover guide, and then we can slide this back cover back on, and we are good to go. I've been tinkering with this for quite a bit now, and I think I finally have everything lined up, at least on the regulator side. We've got the high pressure spring on there. Our return line is going to use the straight fitting with this elbow going back. This is our inlet side, and as you guys can see, I've added the fuel pressure safety switch in line, and we also have a fuel pressure gauge. And then of course our feed to the solenoid is going to be off of this elbow here. I was not able to get I wanted this one down at the bottom, but I wasn't able to get it to face back in this same orientation the way I see it here. It just would not work. But the way that it sits here now, this thing is going to go on this bolt here. I did flatten out the brace a little bit and was able to see that nothing is going to foul on anything. And that is going to be our regulator there, guys. You're going to be able to see the fuel pressure pretty clearly, and nothing else is going to foul on anything, and it'll be just a short little line from the outlet to the solenoid. From everything that they sent, guys, one thing I noticed is the solenoid uses a much smaller AN fitting, which surprisingly nitrous outlet does not have an adapter for to go down to that size. So I'm gonna have to basically order that fitting and kind of work my way from there. So we won't be able to get this installed until I get that fitting. Okay, so now we've got the fuel regulator mounted, and it does look like it's in an odd position, but it isn't fouling on anything, and it's nice and sturdy, not going to go anywhere. Going to have visible fuel pressure so that we can see that. We've got our fuel pressure safety switch, which we're going to be wiring up also. So all that is looking really good. We're going to go ahead and unravel this fuel line here and start routing both the feed and the return. Measure them up, figure out where they're going to go under the car, cut them up, and then make up the fittings. So we're gonna go ahead and drill 2 about 1-inch holes with my step drill, one here and then one probably here, and then we'll go ahead and start probably running from here down and then under the car and all the way to the back, and we can mark the longer hose and then basically cut 2 of those of that same length for the return and the feed. The holes are done. They're right next to each other here, which is really nice. Of course, we've got the nitrous line that's coming in behind that. I am going to be getting some rubber grommets that go around here to seal up, but the good thing about this, we did have to go about 1-inch holes, and the good thing is that once we make up the fuel lines, these fittings are going to be permanently on the fuel line, so we need to make sure that they're able to kind of go through the hole as well. So as you guys can see, this will kind of fit in and be able to slide through, which is really good. I did have to disconnect my amplifier and move it out of the way to kind of give me a good angle here, because I want these kind of low. Up high I had an issue with the fuel, the nitrous line, trying to get that wrapped in, but now we can go ahead and plug this back in and start routing the fuel line. I was able to route everything, and I'm basically mirroring the way that I ran the nitrous line, going under the car and through this heat shield here, all the way back over the subframe in the back, and then into the trunk. And I ended up measuring a little under 14 feet, about 13 feet 8 inches worth of a line, going from right about here to the trunk, and giving myself a little bit of extra cushion wiggle room, because you don't want to cut these short. So I had 13 feet, about 8 inches was where I was at, and I still had plenty of room for some play. I decided to go ahead and cut the length at 14 feet, and that still leaves me plenty of extra hose for this small little section for the fuel solenoid. Now, these AN fittings and PTFE lines are very interesting to cut. Basically, you have to do a very special procedure to make sure that this braiding doesn't just flare out, because once it does, then you're pretty much screwed when it comes to trying to get those fittings right in properly. So one way that they tell you to do it is to go ahead and tape it up, give a nice little extra tape. So I've taped this up quite a bit, and we're gonna cut right down the middle of here. So right the middle would be about 14 feet, and I've gone ahead and marked here, and I've also marked over here. Well guys, my battery died on my rotary, but I want to show you guys kind of just how this cut is coming along. As you guys can see, the tape is holding the threads in its place, and so once we're done, this will be a clean cut all the way through, and the tape is still in its spot, and it doesn't get these nylon threadings all flared out. The importance of making sure you tape it down and make sure that this does not fray is because this collar needs to be able to slip right over, and as you guys can see, it slips very easily. If this would have frayed, it would have been very difficult to get this to slip over, and you would be fighting it quite a bit. And so now we have the collar here, which we gotta basically, now once this has been slipped over, we can fray, we want to fray this so that we can slip this in over the PTFE tubing and then slide in our final fitting. So once we've got the collar sitting flush all the way to the edge, one thing that I like and really helps me be able to insert this in here is go ahead and on your clamp, leave the collar on the back, give yourself about 1.5 inches, and hold this hose in so that you don't have the hose pushing back on you, and you can go ahead and slide this all the way in. But before, of course, use something like this little 3-in-1 oil lubricant or something to be able to help you get it to slide right in. Now it's nice and flush, and by holding the hose, I ensured that the collar didn't actually slip out, or that the PTFE hose kind of push out of the collar. We've got the collar locked in and the hose can move. Now we're gonna push this in all the way until we can reach the threads, and then we can start threading this in. Just like that, guys, we've got our 2 fittings for our feed line. So we're gonna go ahead and finish up the return line as well, which is right there, and then we'll route everything back in, and I'll show you guys everything already installed. It is done. I still got to zip tie a couple things here, but we've got our feed line coming in here, our return line going back. It is going down under the car, and I'll show you guys the way that I routed it. So as you guys can see here, we've got the feed and the return, and unfortunately there's, like I said, not much space, so I do have that small little gap here between the header and the feed and return. Now luckily there's a big open area, so this doesn't get as hot As long as it's not touching, we should be okay. And I've got some zip ties, and I'm gonna zip tie the top to make sure it doesn't hang down. But I actually have the lines running under this heat shield, and I just basically the same way that I routed the nitrous line, although the nitrous line is kind of over on the inside here and over the transmission little brace here. On this side, I ran it right over the header here and then started along the inside here, and it basically goes in here and it stays. There's a big pocket right under here, and you guys can see the lines come back up here, come through here, and then go wrapped around the tank, and then go straight up over the rear subframe, and then come out on this end over here. And finally have the rubber grommets. I need to get one for the nitrous line, but let me show you guys the actual tank. So here we have it. The feed line, of course, is this one, and then the return line was actually more than enough, so it actually has some excess line here, but that's okay as long as it's not kinked. We should be good. And we are done with the plumbing. It took a lot longer than I expected. Now the only thing left to do is make up the line from this fitting here to the fuel solenoid. Again, we have to remove this and swap out the fitting here. Then we'll make the line up. Be very, very easy, and we'll be good to go. All right, finally we have the fuel system all plumbed up. I've got my feed to the solenoid, and I actually was able to turn and rotate the solenoid to show nitrous outlet, so I have it on both the fuel and on the nitrous. I wasn't able to turn the purge because the plug is right there and I don't want it touching, but I've got all the lines ran, guys. Everything's tight, everything is good to go. Now is time for doing all the electricals, so that I'm going to be leaving for the final video, guys, but the hardware is installed. Like I mentioned, we just have to route the piping and the tubing for the purge, but other than that, the hardware has been installed, and now it is time to just go ahead and do all the electrical wiring, and that is going to be a task in it of itself. So hopefully I can get that done here soon, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was all pieced together and everything, and it's kind of hard because this actually was over like 3 days between working with this, cutting the wrong size hose, and actually between working on this and then even putting the fittings on the wrong piece of hose that I wasn't supposed to use, and then routing everything. I basically had to redo my feed line twice because it was the wrong hose that I ended up using. I ended up using the extra length instead of the one that I had measured and cut. But nevertheless, everything is done. And now the good part, guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit the thumbs up. There's a lot of little key things here, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, make sure you hit a thumbs up and subscribe, because we're going to be finishing off this install with the electrical part and then testing it, at least to make sure that things are working, like the two-step, which I'm super excited for. So I'll see you guys in the next one.